Welcome, everybody. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Opera 101 with Cleveland Opera Theater. My name is Stephanie Ruozzo, and I'm here with you today to be chatting about Mozart's Magic Flute, because as you know, it is Mozart month at Cleveland Opera Theater. But before we begin talking, I do want to remind you that we are switching our format. Everybody's going back to school, and Alice Cooper only promised us the summer off. So next week, our programming is going to be switching schedules. Please check out all of our latest information at clevelandoperatheater.org, and you can keep up with all of our amazing programming there as it continues through our virtual 2020 season. So, what about Mozart's Magic Flute is special? Well, this opera and Singspiel is doubly remarkable because of the turmoil in Mozart's life at that time. And it is his last opera. It premiered in September of 1791, and Mozart died in December. So just a few months between that premiere and his succumbing to his final illness. So I want to look at the frenetic activity, pace of work, and just general upheaval in the years leading up to this amazing work. Now, usually we don't look as much at biography on Opera 101. And the reason I do want to look at biography today is because this opera, as Mozart's swan song, if you will, his final masterpiece, was the gateway to his maturity that we never got to experience. So I want to look at what was going on in his life, what was influencing him, and the concerns that he had leading up to the creation of this work. First and foremost on his mind, I'm assuming, would be the money troubles. So throughout adulthood, he was always strapped for cash. For as talented and brilliant as a composer as he was never good with money management. And these issues of job security that a full 100% court appointment / guaranteed patronage would have. His income was mainly from public concerts, private patrons who would commission individual works but not hire him continuously, teaching lessons, and individual publications, plus a small salary as a court Kammermusikus, so a court musician, a performer in the Viennese noble royal court. So the more he composed, the less he performed, and that income began to lessen in his last few years. The students were often unreliable, so he missed out on a lot of income when students would be canceling lessons. Doesn't that sound familiar to us all? But he even had to implement a monthly system to guarantee like some form of job security. And what really worsened in the last couple years was Constance's high medical bill. He was raising a son. He had all of those expenses that any family man would have. But adding on top of that, Constance's ill health, he had all of these doctor bills and treatments to pay for. Not to mention, Mozart was actually very well known for generosity to his friends. No matter his own situation, he was known for lending and supporting anyone who might happen to need and ask for help. So that also kind of lessened the cushion that he otherwise might have had. Another, I don't want to say tumultuous because this was a successful event, but another priority in Mozart's life was that he had just come off of Così fan tutte. That opera opened in 1790, and it was more work than usual for Mozart and his librettist Lorenzo da Ponte, because this was the only original story they set. In other words, they had to write everything themselves rather than basing their libretto on existing poetry. Now, people debate the scenario may have been suggested by Emperor Joseph II based on some real-life events going on at court, but we don't know for sure. And even if it were based on a real-life event, the reality remains that they had to put this opera together from scratch, which was a much more difficult and daunting task than Mozart's earlier collaborations. Così fan tutte was an immediate commercial success. It was the best attended opera of its season, but it was accompanied by criticism for moral and structural moral and structural failings that did set Mozart back in the last little bit of his life. People took issue with representation of women's infidelity. Women were not supposed to even think of being unfaithful, and this whole opera is literally titled "Women All Do It." So there were also complaints about the unity. So if you look at principles of good drama that have been around since the time of Aristotle and his Poetics, there are these ideas of unity. And one of the unities that a good drama is supposed to have is unity of time. In other words, a plot is supposed to take place in no more than 24 hours. And Così fan tutte transgresses that rule. So this big opera that was a huge commercial success, everybody was talking about it, audiences loved it and kept listening to it again and again. But the critics were starting to turn on Mozart, and that was starting to be a thorn in his side. The more immediate peril was Emperor Joseph II's death in February of 1790. I don't mean peril in terms of that Mozart's life was threatened by the accession of Joseph II's successor, Leopold II. Leopold II had nothing against Mozart, but it was scary for Mozart's career because Joseph II loved modern opera buffa. He wanted Così fan tutte. He wanted the Da Ponte collaborations and these hilarious farces. But Leopold II actually was a much more conservative listener, and he didn't want this new opera buffa. He wanted opera seria and stricter adherence to Italian mannerisms that had been around for a longer time, rather than these new farcical practices that Mozart and Da Ponte were so committed to developing. So Mozart had to switch gears in the last year of his life just to stay afloat in a new court, in a new milieu. And in fact, when Leopold II was crowned for his coronation ceremony, Mozart was contracted to compose La Clemenza di Tito for its premiere in Prague. So the opera was premiered right in conjunction with Leopold II's coronation. And Mozart only did this in 6 weeks. And Mozart only got the gig because Salieri, whom we discussed last week, declined it. Even though the libretto was based on Metastasio's original poetry, Salieri said no, so Mozart got stuck with this task unexpectedly out of nowhere. Again, more turmoil. Eventually, Tito did premiere on September 6th, so that was in the fall of the penultimate year of Mozart's life, again ramping up into chaos. And just again to stay financially afloat, Mozart composed a spate, an absolute slew of projects in 1791. So some of his most famous pieces, his clarinet concerto, the motet Ave Verum Corpus, a Masonic cantata, which is a large-scale piece that's almost like an opera in and of itself, and of course his unfinished Requiem. These all are from 1791, in the last months of Mozart's life. It's hard to imagine being that prolific so close to your own demise. And this brings us to Mozart's actual work on Magic Flute. So Magic Flute was inspired by several sources. There was a fairy tale by the author Liebeskind, and it was published in a collection of fairy tales by Wieland in 1786 through 1789. That collection and editing process was just a few years before the Magic Flute. And there's a more distant antecedent in Jean Terrassont's novel Setos from 1731. So same century, but about half a century before. Mozart knew that he was going to be working on this by June 11th. He wrote a letter to Constanza describing, oh, hey, I have to undertake this new task. And it was mostly done by July. So remember, this is a matter of weeks, and it's premiering in September. So the pace, I keep mentioning months because years are not enough to talk about Mozart. The pace of these final compositions is just so frantic and so frenetic. And people liked the Magic Flute. It was an instant success. musically, although they did complain about the libretto. So according to Cliff Eisen and Stanley Sadie, who are the two, if not the two leading biographers of Mozart, um, there was a controversy surrounding whether Sarastro should be revealed as the good guy or if that muddies the moral implications of the plot. And audiences were debating over whether that was the right plot twist to go with. Um, but the music was never in doubt, and Mozart went out on quite a high note. And I don't mean that as a pun. I really mean this was the gateway to Mozart's maturity. So these were hectic last years for Mozart, but productive of his finest composition. And the Magic Flute teases us with a glimpse of what Mozart could have accomplished had he lived further. And unfortunately, we'll never know, but boy, it's fun to imagine. And it's fun to listen to what we already have. So thank you for joining me today on Opera 101. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Please do go to clevelandoperatheater.org, check out the mailing list so you can get all of our updates and written communications, and keep abreast of all the events that we've got going on for our 2020 season. Tomorrow, please do tune in for our latest Page to Stage. Keep up with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and we're going to keep providing you with all kinds of fun opera content there. And we'll see you there. Thank you, everybody. Bye.